goes live in 2 minutes. Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hey, and welcome to the 23rd of December. Although it feels like the 23rd of April, but what the heck. Nice to be here with you. This is our last day of this year. As I said, Celine is decamping to India. To Wilmerding. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I should. But I'll be, I'll be home. So, I wish I could have something. I was thinking, well, you should do some Christmassy thing, some end of the year thing. And, I have to tell you, I would do more of that, except that because of the form this podcast takes, the vast majority of you do not listen to it in real time. You listen to it later, and later you can't be part of it. You can't. So it's harder than if I had a radio audience who's there in real time and could respond. So, I mean, little things that we used to be able to do but I can't. I don't think it works. I've tried a few times. It just doesn't take off. There's not enough of you in real time. Since the vast majority of people do not ever call. Less than 1% of an audience listening to talk shows would even consider calling. It's true. Well, Celine, have you ever called a station? No. Generally, women absolutely don't. But, so, that's just the way it is. Hang on, I'll get my shtick together. There is news. So, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is now down to, how many people are still left on that court? Gee whiz, it's down to like 4. There's 4 people on that court right now. 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. As to where everybody else went, well, some are sort of in jail, and others have left in shame and disgrace. And now the last one, this Judge Eakin, or could be Aiken, I don't know how it's pronounced, has now been suspended by the whatever tribunal does such things. And even though he tearfully yesterday begged them not to do it, he tearfully apologized. He said he, meant no disrespect to anyone, blah, blah, blah. This is about emails, of course. This is the email thing. And let me just, so you have some sense of what these emails are. He was first exonerated. A few, sort of legal committees looked at and said, it's nothing. Come on. Just a guy being a guy. Anyway, some of the emails said, well, they were like, I'm sure you've seen them. They're what a lot of people think are funny. They're crude. They're sexist. They're often racist. So this is what this justice was either getting or forwarding to his pals for a yuck. Jokes mocking women and African Americans and Mexicans and feminists and gays and lesbians and all kinds of other people. I think the two, though, that really freaked out the judicial panel were he exchanged a series of emails containing racy sexual comments about two of the women who worked in his office. Saying things like how he'd like to bed them and things like that. And amazingly, the two women who he had these sexual fantasies about both testified at his hearing that they were not offended. That the judge has always been respectful and lovely to them. But so even when they're confronted with the emails he's sending about what he'd like to do to them, they still are not offended. Man, those two sound like throwbacks. It reminds me of me when I was a secretary. But that was in 1972. So in 1972, I'm sitting there in front of my typewriter. They had just come out with these typewriters that could do amazing things like correct. If you made a mistake, they'd back up and get rid of the letter. It was like, wow! It was like, God, I can't believe this. An IBM Selectric. So I'm out there typing, and I did not take shorthand, but I was good at taking, having the lawyers talk into a dictaphone and then transcribing what they said. So I was at my desk doing just that. And it was the Mr. Walker, who was one of the attorneys, sort of a slight, nerdy, bright guy. And he said, and in the case of blah, 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 and this and that, and yada, 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 and I'm typing away, and he said, shit. Lynn, why don't you just come in here and sit on my lap? And naturally, I don't think I got to, shit. Lynn, let me... I remember being startled. And then embarrassed because I was not angry. I did not know how to handle that because back in the day, you would not have said, I thought, oh, God. So I just ignored it. That's all I did. And that's why when I see these secretaries of this justice saying, oh, because I like Mr. Walker. He's the one who finally said to me, what are you doing here? You need to go back to college, get a degree. This is crazy. He said, you're, come on. So he was one of all my life, it's guys who've pushed me. So, but I would not have confronted him over that. Celine this is the way it was. You did not confront this kind of stuff. If you did, you would have spent practically every other working moment confronting that kind of crap. You would have. And guess what? There was no law against it. He hadn't broken any law by doing that. There was not even a concept of sexual harassment. I didn't think of it as that. He didn't think of it as that. That's just the way the world was, okay? So that's why I tend to be a little more, loosey-goosey about what a lot of young women just get so worked up about. I'm thinking, Jesus, come on. I mean, I've told you that when I finally did take his advice, I did go back to college. I did get a job in a television station as the first woman reporter and then anchor. And my first day on the job was when I walked into that little newsroom that was filled with men and sat down at my desk and happened to open the top drawer. There was a used condom in it. And they were all just sitting there waiting for me to open that drawer. That's the kind of crap, you didn't. And when people say, you swear so much, I've told this is why I swear. It was my way because it wasn't a crime. It wasn't this, it wasn't that. And I wanted to make it. And so I thought, they think they're going to run me off by this crap. I just became, I guess one of them. That's what you do. The women became, adept at the locker room humor. Don't take offense. I developed, a very salty language, which I've not been able to kick. That's what happened. You adjusted to it. So Margie's writing, men are really 12-year-old boys. Well, a lot of them are, yeah. And the judge, getting back to the story, the judge, when he was tearfully appealing to these other judges not to take his, high-status cushy job away from him, he said, perhaps my demeanor was one of the boys, but what I sent was to people who were one of the boys. It was the locker room. He was saying, come on, guys. This is how guys interact. We send these things around that show women on all fours looking like a pig. That was one of them. A big obese woman on all fours with some disgusting thing written under it. Or they do it with blacks or anybody who's not one of them. In other words, a privileged white male. And they don't see any. I mean, here he is. He's apologizing, but he still doesn't get it. Well, I was just doing that with the guys. That's how we got. But he's 67 years old. He's a justice of the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You mean you never lose that? It's amazing. And you see what they don't get, but what, thank God, this tribunal got, was that if you regularly demean women and African Americans and Hispanics, and then you're confronted with cases in which Sexual harassment might be part of the case. Racism might be part of the case. The people that you have to sit in judgment of might be in some of these whole classes of people that you regularly denigrate and think is funny. How the hell are any of us who aren't part of your privileged white male heterosexual locker room, how are we to think that you're going to understand us, be able to sit in judgment of us? And he still doesn't get it. So at this point, he's been suspended, but that's before he will now face a full trial. So he could still get off on this. I hope not. The Court of Judicial Discipline said that he had tainted the Pennsylvania judiciary in the eyes of the public. The integrity of the judiciary has been and continues to be subject to disrespect. May I just add in parentheses, well-deserved disrespect? Now, I think if they're going to have any hope of cleaning this up, he's gone, just like McCaffrey's gone, another one of the boys, as well as what's-her-name, who's sitting at home with an ankle bracelet on. We the people, elected 3 new justices who will take their seats in January. And I think I can say with great assurance that not one of those 3 will engage in this kind of behavior. So that's an improvement. God. Judge Aiken said the messages are just male banter. And he said they did not cast the court in a bad light because they were just exchanges with friends and were never intended to be made public. What? You don't get it. You're a judge sitting high up, literally, looking down at poor pleaders, people who are asking for justice. And if that court is full of men who think it's funny to denigrate women and racial minorities and gender minorities, why should any of the people belonging to those groups think that these jerks on high are going to be fair and judicious? So he doesn't get it. But at least the Court of Judicial Discipline has sort of gotten it. It ain't over. We'll see what happens with it. He tearfully apologized. Oh, and you know what'll happen? If he loses his job, he'll become more so. It won't enlighten him. He'll become so misogynistic, so more conservative in his views, so certain that he was brought down by political correctness and that there was, in fact, no real harm done to anyone who appeared before him or to the integrity of the court. I just realized I didn't unload my libation, and I'm thirsty. I'm afraid I left it in my... Oh, no. I can't. Oh, thank God. There it is. Okay. Donald Trump is, Margie's saying, it's like Trump. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then there are guys, like you can bet that Barack Obama, there's a guy, right, that he doesn't engage in this kind of stuff. My father, I can assure you, did not engage in this stuff. And because of that, I think the guys in his circle often thought of him as a a prude. But he didn't get that kind of thing. He didn't believe in denigration. Now, I seemingly can argue on both sides in that I like to think that we should all get a little more relaxed about our concerns about language, because it's getting to the point where people are literally editing themselves before they speak. And especially in certain venues where, oh, I better not say that. That could be misconstrued. Or like the other day when Charlie Deitch was on, and he said something about monkeying around. Remember that? I didn't get anything. Both he, immediately after saying it, and Celine immediately thought, uh-oh, he said monkeying around. In reference to this, the arrest of these black teenagers. And maybe he said something like, they were like monkeying around or something. And then immediately he said, oh, God, it's like, calling them monkeys. But no, that's not what it was. Monkeying around has nothing to do with race. It has to do with the way monkeys, have you been to the zoo lately? The way monkeys, cavort and play and just, screw around. Hanging from trees and jumping around. I mean, it's monkeying around. So things can get a little crazy. As a matter of fact, I printed something out and then forgot to take it off the printer. Let me get it here. I might be able to find it again. But this has to do, again, with this sort of overreaction to potentially harming someone's sensibilities. And this brings us to Oberlin, where my nephew goes. I was on that campus not too long ago because I dropped him off on my way back from Ann Arbor. It's sort of halfway between Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And someone, an Asian American, has written a piece about how misguided apparently the students at Oberlin are, in that they have said several international students from Asian countries, according to the Oberlin Review, the school's newspaper, have raised complaints about how the so-called Asian food in the cafeterias at Oberlin was ridiculous and weird. And it wasn't just that the food was bad. The sophomore co-chair of the Vietnamese Student Association said that the dining halls had offended all Asian students by serving such a terrible version of dishes from their home countries, that it was disrespectful and in fact amounted to nothing less than cultural appropriation. Bad chop suey is not cultural appropriation. It's just bad chop suey. And that's what the person writing this said back. Hey, it's school food. It's cafeteria food. What do you want? There was no offense intended. None. And in fact, there was quite the opposite intended. We'll make some sushi, we'll make some pot stickers, because we have a lot of these Asian students. And, of course, they just didn't. Anyway, Oberlin's director of dining services said in a statement on Monday that, quote, in our efforts to provide a vibrant menu, we fell short in the execution of several dishes in a manner that was culturally insensitive. No! It was just bad cooking. And As I said, I might walk right out of here, walk over to Brugger's Bagels, and charge them with all kinds of appropriation because those bagels, as any Jew will tell you, aren't bagels. So anyway, I just want, So the person who's writing this says, let's review what cultural appropriation actually means. Cultural appropriation involves taking another's culture, usually that of a minority, usually by a Western or colonial power, and using it outside of its original cultural context. Calling your sports team the Redskins is cultural appropriation. Blackface minstrelsy was cultural appropriation. But crappy American Chinese or American Vietnamese food? I don't think so. So there you go. Here's what it's a time-honored college rite of passage, much like learning that just because you dislike something does not make it cultural appropriation. However, speaking of that, did you see that the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit has struck down a 70-year-old provision in federal law that was based in political correctness? This is 70 years old. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office had always said that it, by law, would bar the registration of disparaging trademarks. So, forever and a day, the Patent Office has never allowed the registration of trademarks or patents that contain ethnic slurs or that could offend vulnerable communities. And someone brought a case against this. The case was brought by a rock band from Portland, Oregon, made up mostly of Asian Americans. And their band name, which they wanted to trademark, is The Slants. S-L-A-N-T-S. The Slants. And they were denied over and over, and they kept appealing. And they were denied because calling a group of Asians the Slants could be deemed, obviously, extremely offensive. But what if the group is Asian American? And they call themselves the Slants? Why the hell shouldn't they be able to? Well, that's what the U.S. Court of Appeals figured this week when it struck down that 70-year-old provision which said that you had to not ever disparage a group in a trademark. The reason I wanted to bring this up, as I said in the in the Oberlin case, where the author was trying to explain what is cultural appropriation, using Redskins as a name for your team, which is considered by Native Americans to be a disparaging term, and it is appropriated by an entity made up almost certainly owned by white people, and a game played by black and white people, maybe a Native American here and there. So the Wall Street Journal, in reporting that the slants finally got their trademark, although this will be appealed again, it says here that this ruling for the slants could definitely help the Washington Redskins, which is fighting, as you know, the Patent and Trademarks Office decision to cancel its trademarks because of the offensiveness of that. So it could well be this, a case brought by Asian Americans wanting to call their band the Slants, now will allow the Redskins to continue their cultural misappropriation. The federal court, in overturning this, said whatever our personal feelings about the mark at issue here, the trademark, or other disparaging marks, the First Amendment forbids government regulators to deny registration because they find the speech likely to offend others. The Constitution protects free speech even when speech inflicts great pain. There you go. All right. Melanie writes, as a woman of a certain age who worked back in the day, said, I totally agree with what you would do back in the day. I had a friend at that time, 70s, who was basically date raped by a boss in her office. When she told me about it, I never thought we should call the police. Or we should tell someone in the company. She would have never been believed. And I'll tell you this, even if she had been believed, wouldn't have made a damn bit of difference. She would have been blamed. I always think of this when people bring up Bill Cosby and why these women just coming out of the woodwork now, why these women are coming out now. Nobody would have believed them at that time, and they knew it, and to bring, all they would have brought on themselves is holy hell. It was a different reality. That's why women's liberation was a necessity. Women were treated like property, like crap. You could do anything to us. And we pretty much had to take it. So when you see women in their 60s and 70s and even 80s, and you're a young woman, tip your hat to some of them because they put up with unbelievable crap, and even rape to keep those jobs, to prove they could do those jobs, and to make sure that other women continued to come in to the workforce. It was a bitch. I mean, I'm sure if I racked my brains, I could come up with some doozy stories. Quite sure I wouldn't even have to rack my brain. Okay, here's a laugh. Rob Rogers. Rob Rogers has a Brood on Grant cartoon today in the local paper, and it's in the diner, and he's talking about the fact that Zagat has now rated Pittsburgh as the #1 food town. So you got the Yinzer that he always has, the guy who represents, the Steeler fans, the Yinzer. He's at the diner, and he says, no, the foodies, they're going to ruin Pittsburgh cuisine. And then he thinks of himself at a restaurant, and here's a waiter saying to him, "I am sorry, sir. The pomegranate fennel quinoa salad does not come with fries on it." And I thought that was funny because I never in my life saw fries on a salad till I came to Pittsburgh. Celine, had you ever seen fries on a salad? No, unheard of. That's a Pittsburgh thing. Fries in your sandwich. That's from Auntie Brothers. Fries on everything. I was thinking the other day about those sandwiches with fries on them. And I was thinking, is this part, I don't know if anyone ever has looked into the history of it, is it because if you're a blue-collar worker, you're working in the mills, and you finally got time for a lunch break or something, if you put the entire meal sort of between two slices of bread, then you've got, I mean, I don't know. It seems like it might have been something like that. You could have meat, you could have a starch, you could have your carbs, your protein, all slapped between these two, and you could, so I don't know. For some reason, I was thinking about that yesterday because I personally can't stand those sandwiches. I think they're awful. Maybe if the fries were better. But, because I love fries. I pretty much do fries on everything. Okay, just a few more judicial things. As you know, this Pittsburgh City Council passed these laws to a certain extent regulating what employers within the city had to do. And both of them were slapped down yesterday or Monday by Judge Joe James, who essentially said the city had absolutely no legal authority to order private businesses to give sick days to employees, or in the other case, what was the other case? There were two laws. Oh, also, they had passed a law that said that buildings, such as a big building like I am in, which provides, security personnel, that they had passed a law called the Safe and Secure Building Act, which required that security workers in many buildings had to receive training in CPR and other things. And that was passed in June, but was knocked down this month. And the thing is, something that I find very annoying about this state is it seems like Harrisburg refuses to allow Pittsburgh to govern itself. I'm forever amazed that, Pittsburghers will say, this is what we want. Like, we want stricter gun laws in our city. And then Harrisburg will say, you can't do that. And here they have a law that they should have known. I don't think this has any chance. That, they can't do it. You can't try to make employers in the city treat employees with a modicum of respect. And what boils my blood is the more you find out about how this works, you find out that Philadelphia, they aren't subject to this same crap. They're exempted from these kind of laws that allow Harrisburg to decide what goes on in Pittsburgh. Because Philly is a Class A city or something, and we're Class B. So Philly's forever getting special dispensation. And I would suggest it gets special dispensation, mostly because it probably has I'm sure it does, has a much larger delegation too. But as we were talking yesterday about the wondrous Missouri legislature, and a lot of states are like this, where there are just two major metropolitan areas in the state, Philly, Pittsburgh, and in Missouri, Kansas City, St. Louis. And everything else is rural or suburban. In other words, it's Republican. And so the Republicans overwhelm the Democratic urban areas. And it just seems like they're always, I don't know what we can do about that. I just don't know. We don't have enough clout. So it's not known at this point whether the city is going to appeal Judge James' decisions, but I think odds are they don't, because I don't see them actually prevailing. I don't. Yeah, see, if we had more people in real time, we could have a field day of a show with older women regaling everybody with stories of how they were treated in the workplace, and how you didn't even think for a minute to protest, not for a minute. Okay, here's another piece I printed out and then, of course, left in my printer. It'll be there when I get home. So it's a total... I'm sorry, trees. I'm really sorry. Okay. This has to do with another one of those crazy things where some woman in Illinois in 2013... She lives in an apartment building in Chicago. There is a playground right next to the apartment building. And this woman allowed her 3 boys to go to the playground and play by themselves. Okay, now I'll give you the ages. They were 11, 9, and 5. Well, you know the rest of the story. So the 3 kids are having fun playing on the playground, and a woman walks by and sees something that, my God, there's 3 children playing. And I don't see an adult other than me here. So she did what any adult does in this day and age. She called the cops. Their poor mother ended up in the Department of Children and Family Services. She was charged with child neglect. Unbelievably, she was allowed to keep her children. They weren't placed in foster care. But she ended up, the charge resulted in her losing her job. The charge also resulted in her from volunteering at her children's school, which she regularly had also done. I remember the term I couldn't think of the other day. The sanctimommies. The woman who called the cops is a sanctimommy. There are so many friggin' sanctimonious jerk-offs out there now who are forever meddling in business that is not theirs. Here's the good news. The state of Illinois, 2 years later, finally decided to throw out the citation against the woman. Whether they got her job back, I don't know. And this is purely because there was a change in leadership in the child welfare department. And someone actually has taken over that department in Illinois that looks at things and looks at the nuance. It's not just zero tolerance. Looks at the circumstances. And after they did that, they said a charge of inadequate supervision really doesn't hold because these kids, first of all, the playground, the mother could look out the window and see her kids. But then this article in the Chicago Tribune goes into the craziness that has happened to us. And it said here, in recent decades, our ideas about what can be considered inadequate supervision has just mushroomed. I would have been charged with inadequate supervision so many times, I cannot begin to tell you. In 1971, we're back in those early 70s. In 1971, I mean, they were lousy in some ways, but they were better in others. 80% of third graders walked to school alone. 80% of third graders walked to school alone. Today, we would jail their mothers. You know how many third graders are walking to school by themselves now? 9%. You think the kids are better off for this? I got to tell you, my third grader, he walked to school by himself. He walked to school by himself as a second grader. And as a first grader, I never walked him to school. I walked him to school the first day of kindergarten. And then he was on his own. I mean, granted, I lived 2.5 blocks from the school. It never occurred to me. See, I mean, I can see cops now arresting me, seeing my little kid walking by himself. I would have been arrested. Maybe he would have ended up in foster care. So what we have here, and I rail about this all the time, is this extraordinary decline in childhood freedom, in children being able to, being seen to be capable. I mean, it's a parent's job to make sure their kids are. And I this whole idea of scaring the bejesus out of kids about strangers and this and that has gotten so crazy that, you know, you can say hi to a kid now and they will not say hello back. Hi, I'll say. And, you know, I'm a rapist, I guess. I don't know. I'm an absconder. I'm a kidnapper. And then the article just flat out says, over the years, rising neuroticism among parents has found its way into our justice system. Thank you. Thank you for that, because this is crazy. And increasingly parents are nuts. It's neurotic. It is. It should be labeled. I want the psychiatric community to start getting on the parents in a different way, labeling most of these parents as lunatics, as people so frightened. By the way, child abduction in this country is way down. Way down. But let's not let facts get in the way. I'm trying to find an actual number. But it's way, way down. Never mind. Fear rules. And even those of you who might laugh at the fears of certain people who think Donald Trump's going to keep him safe, you got to look around. You all know people who are supposedly sentient and rational and their fears for their children. All of this craziness has made children with more allergies than we've ever seen. They don't have immunity to things because, like we like, don't start me up. I'm sorry. But I still have not recovered from finding out what a parent is now supposed to be. Blown away by it. Still am. All right. So we said yesterday, Trump said that Hillary was schlonged. Big deal. By the way, I actually heard some, and I'm sure it's true, some serious commentator saying, Trump's continued use of these, he said, New York slang. What he meant, New York is often a dog whistle for Jew. Did you know that? Jews know it. So if you say this New York slang, why don't they just say Yiddish? This New York slang is not going to help him in Iowa. That's true. Because you know how many people in Iowa reading schlonged? I mean, you might have been confused for a minute because that's not a common word. And I'd never heard it used that way. But he will seem odd to them. Exotic. And they don't like odd and exotic. They like corn-fed evangelical Christians. That's what they like. But I didn't hear what he said about Hillary Clinton taking a bathroom break during this debate. So apparently, and there was concern among the Clinton contingent about this, there was a, 2-minute break or a 5-minute break or something during the course. And I suppose then the network was able to show some commercials. And the people on stage are standing there for so long, get to run off, maybe sit down somewhere, including on a toilet, and, just get comfortable. The men's, this will not surprise any women, the men's bathroom was right there. The women's bathroom, way down the hall. And so Hillary in her heels had to whoa. She had to get down there. She had to do her thing. She had to wash her hands. She had to whoop back. And unfortunately, she didn't quite make it. So that the debate started and her lectern was empty. And she came in a little late and said, sorry. What Donald Trump said about that is so... it makes no sense in his vulgarity. He said, what happened to her? I'm watching the debate and she disappeared. Where did she go? He's just at a rally in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You can bet his fans are hooting and hollering, right? And he says, I know where she went. It's disgusting. I don't want to talk about it. No, it's too disgusting. Don't say it. It's disgusting. He used the term disgusting 3 times because Hillary Clinton had to pee. What's with Donald Trump and women's liquid emanations? What is with... Everybody has to pee, you friggin' fool. And unlike men, when women pee, it involves a little more work. And also, the bathroom was much farther away. Why would you say disgusting? I don't want to talk about it. Is he insane? Oh, and I heard someone else say on some radio station the other day, he might have gone too far this time. I think, oh, come on. This doesn't even approach some of the things he said. Schlonged is going to end his, his presidential bid, calling Hillary Clinton having to pee disgusting. It's Trump. Nothing unusual going on here. Just move along. Move along. A lot of judicial stuff today. I got one more. This is a good one, too. And this is remarkable in that this is something that actually passed the Congress of the United States. Both houses. Not a big to-do, which means it had to have been bipartisan. My God. I'm shocked. I really am shocked. I'm especially shocked that the Republicans jumped on this because it is essentially an environmental issue, and they came through. It's the Microbead-Free Waters Act. Now, what do we know? We brush our teeth. We put exfoliating things. You got body wash that gently exfoliates and there's all kinds of stuff in products we use. And I don't know what we don't think what's in it. Well, what a lot of cosmetics especially have are these little microscopic plastic beads. And they're added as abrasives in toothpaste, facial scrubs. I mean, a lot of body scrub, a lot of stuff. And 11 billion of these little microbeads are released into the nation's waterways every day. And have been for years. 11 billion. And even those little teeny weenies going into the Great Lakes, going into our rivers here, well, they're causing trouble. What happens is they sort of get together and they attract chemicals like PCBs, which then adhere to their surface, become concentrated there. So you got this crap floating around. Fish ingest it. Kills fish. You can open up any of you fishermen, any of you cut open, filleted a fish and saw a plastic ball about the size of this fall out of its belly, because lots of reports of that. Not unusual. So you get these plastics in the fish, and then guess what? We eat the fish. So now we got the plastics. Anyway, unbelievably, the Congress, acting together, said, you have to stop this by July of 2017. That gives, of course, the manufacturers time to figure out some other thing. How about sand? That's an abrasive. Sugar. That's an abrasive. Salt. That's an abrasive. Come on, guys. Go with some naturally occurring. I'm abrasive. Put me in. Jeez. Okay, so that's good news. Don't say I didn't give you any. Here's some more good news. Amongst a horror story. I bring you to Kenya. You're on a bus in Kenya. You're going from Nairobi to a smaller community up in the northwest. And all of a sudden, gunfire. And all of a sudden, your bus is stopped. And on board come 10 friggin' Boko Haram or whatever. I don't know which particular group these sons of bitches belong to. And they start saying, all right, we need to get all of you, if you're Muslim, get off the bus. And everybody knows what this means. The Muslims were going to be okay, but anyone who wasn't was going to get killed, because that's what these guys do. And unbelievably, I mean, to me, this is just such an extraordinary thing. I'll just read the Washington Post report. When the militants attempted to sort through the passengers and told the Muslims that they would be spared if they got off the bus now, the Muslims on the bus refused to leave. One Muslim, Abdi Mohammed Abdi, told the press, we even gave some non-Muslims our religious attire to wear so that they would not be identified easily. We stuck together. The militants threatened to shoot us, but we still refused, and we protected our brothers and sisters. Wow. That is extraordinary courage. And what blows me away about it is there was no real time. These are strangers. There was no real time for every single Muslim on that bus to say, you know what, we're not going to leave these poor people here, these Christians, these whatever they are, we're not leaving them. It had to have come from such a place of, I mean, you're given a free pass. Get off and live. And all of them said no. Now, they all would have been mowed down, I am sure. But God was on their side. Man. Because another bus started coming toward them. And these murderers who had gotten on their bus, fearful that was the police or something, they jumped off the bus and took off. So they were safe. But quite clearly, they were willing to die. They were willing to die. They weren't going to save their Christian neighbors and strangers sitting on the bus, because all it meant is they would all die. That's what you would have to assume would happen. Amazing. Humbles me. Brings me almost to tears. I mean, it just really humbles me. Tell that story to any of your family members you might be meeting up with at Christmas time, the time of peace on earth and goodwill toward men. Tell them that story of Muslims willing to die to protect Christians, okay? In Kenya. Tell them that. Uh-oh, I just got one email. Kathleen, with respect, stop talking about Trump. Help to banish him from the airwaves. It's demeaning to all of us. Love the show and your delivery. Well, except that, obviously. It's okay. I mean, I didn't talk about him much, but I just wanted to. I was so stunned by what he said about the disgustingness of Hillary Clinton peeing that I couldn't not say something. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas and holiday, and I'll see you the Monday after the 1st. I guess that's January 4. It's going to be a long time, but don't worry, I'll come back abrasive as hell. Okay? Have fun. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.